Good afternoon, everyone. So we're continuing in the book of Ruth, which, as I've titled it, knowing the title of Ruth means a book of friendship. And we already looked at certain traits of Ruth, but today I'm going to look at one particular trait that's important when it comes to being friends. And that is about promises. And as I begin, I'm going to tell you two stories. One of a broken promise and one of a kept promise. So I went to a Japanese restaurant, and this is many years ago. And I was going there with my family. We booked a table. We called them up. They said, we got reservations, at a certain time. And of course, we show up on the dot at that time as promised. Now, I know the restaurant business is not an easy one, right? It's a terrible thing when people book 10 seats and people don't show up because that's money down the drain, right? And so some places now make you make a deposit, all kinds of things, confirmation, all this other stuff. But this is back in the day. And so, but we show up on time and we say, okay, we're here for that reservation. This is my name. This is everything else. And say, okay, that's great. Just wait here. And we waited. And we waited. And we were looking at, isn't that table 10 people and it's open? I said, is this our table? He says, no, it's not. And we waited. About 15 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by and go, whoa, wait a minute. Did we not make a reservation here? Was there not a promise that we would show up and there would be a table? And so in the end, they did not fulfill their promise, and we were hungry. So we went across the street to another restaurant that had room, and they lost our business not that evening. They lost our business forever. This is not a business course. This is a message. This is a sermon. But you cannot run a business on broken promises, can you? And to be honest, and get you the end of the story, this place no longer exists. But there's another story to be told, and again, it has to do with restaurants. I made an appointment with a friend to show up for a meal. I think it was lunch. But I was stuck across town, running late, and transit was not helping. Now, most of you can't imagine this if you're born at a later date, but we had no cell phones. This is ancient times, dark ages. So I couldn't phone ahead. And I'm on transit, so I can't, jump off, I don't even know what a payphone is. To just call ahead to the restaurant and say, hey, I've got a friend, can you look for them? And so I ended up being 45 minutes late. And at that point, I'm going, I don't know if my friend's going to be there. You see, back in that day, because there's no cell phones, no one ditches 10 minutes before, right? When you make a promise that you're going to show up, you better well show up. But at this point, I had really stretched. I was feeling really bad because I hate being late. 45 minutes is beyond my even wait time, right? I'm going, something's happened. But sure enough, I walk in, 45 minutes late, and my friend is still there. By themselves, maybe they had a drink and they're going, oh, there you are. I said, why did you wait for me? Because I know you keep your promises, and so do I. I got to say, that was a friend. Because I'm going I suck as a friend if I'm not showing up in 40. I would have been out. So I want you to find a conversation partner for 5 minutes think of a time when either a promise that was made was broken or when a promise that was made was kept. It can be as deep or as simple as you like it to be. So take a moment, think it through, and then find a conversation partner and go to. So introduce yourself. If you don't know that person before, say hello if you haven't done so yet. So go to. Find someone, maybe somebody you didn't come with, that would help, but whoever's most convenient around. Okay? So go to it. I'll give you 5 minutes. Okay, I hope you're having fun. One of my favorite things is to hear you all chatting away, because that's what the life of the church should be, being able to chat with one another. And hopefully you're able to share how you felt about whether a promise was kept or a promise was broken by whoever it was. But I want you to hold that in your mind, because when a promise is broken, it makes you feel bad. I mean, that's just a very generic term for all the negative things. Upset, angry, confused. Why was this promise made and then it was not followed through on? But when a promise is kept, even in extraordinary circumstances, it's one thing to have a promise kept, a simple one, but one when you know that it took that other person a risk or something difficult, that cements friendship. That shows something worthwhile. And it builds friendship when promises are made and promises are kept. So this is what we're going to be talking about in terms of Ruth today. And I would define promise very simply, doing what you say you will, no matter what. Right? Even if it's a 45-minute wait or whatever it is that you may have endured or experienced. Someone who's willing to do what they say they will. Because in the story that we have so far in Ruth, we've now arrived at chapter 4, which I call the negotiation. And for what Ghislaine read for us, we have a pretty good idea what that conversation and negotiation looks like. We left off last week in chapter 3 with Ruth becoming vulnerable, but also providing direction as to what she wants, taking initiative with Boaz and saying, redeem me. And then Boaz says, I will. Except there's someone else in line ahead of me. You gotta love a guy who's not gonna cut in line, right? People who cut in line, they suck. And if you're that person, I'm sorry, you suck. But he's not a line cutter. Wow, that's respectable in a place like Canada, anyways, or basically the UK, or anywhere there's some kind of rule of line, right? Or something like this, rule of queuing. And he says to her, today, I'm going to go and talk to that guy who is ahead of me, and I'll see where he's at. But if it's possible, I will do what needs to be done, and I will redeem you and Naomi, your husband who has passed away, your father-in-law. I will take care of all of those things. It's pretty involved, actually, what she's asking of him. And we're going to get a little more detail on this. So he goes to the gate. We had a really funny conversation in our home group because we're doing wisdom literature. And we got to Proverbs 31, which is about the woman of good character, great character. And it says, her husband sits at the gate. And it's like, the comment was, what a lazy bum. Well, he just sits at the gate? What is this? So she's like working, doing all these things, taking care of the family, and he just sits at the gate. Well, This is a cultural thing. If you're sitting at the gate, you're considered a judge and a leader in the community. Because people come to the gate as they would come to, like, say, City Hall. In other words, this person is a civic leader, right? They're an organizer. They're a person who has authority, that oversees, people look up to. But that's the story of Proverbs 31. And so this is why Boaz is going to go to the city gate. He's not leaving town. That's not what he's doing. He's not skipping out. He's going to go to the gate because that's where the judges are. That's where the elders of their community. And Ephrathah, also known as Jerusalem, the name Ephrathah has not actually persisted to our day, but the name Bethlehem, not Jerusalem, Bethlehem has. And Bethlehem is the same name for that region and that area. So he's going to go to the city gate. He's going to City Hall. He's going to say, okay, I got to have this conversation. So he invites the other guardian redeemer, as the Bible teaches us, the name, to come. He says, come meet me at the gate. There's something important we got to talk about. And he also calls out the elders, and he says, look, come and be a witness. You know, we're going to have a thing. We're going to have a chit-chat with each other. So he gets to the court, gets to the gate, and they're going to negotiate. And it's a pretty straightforward negotiation. Basically, we're talking about real estate. You say, oh, is this about Ruth? It's actually not. It's about real estate. It's about family. So, if you read the scriptures, it says, okay, Naomi, who's come back from Moab, has a piece of land to sell. Now, this is not entirely true. It's a translation thing. Because Naomi technically holds the land in some form of trust because of her husband, Elimelech. Remember, women in that day did not have that status. And she probably had no means by which to work that land because she had been away for quite a long time. And either the land's been left fallow or the land has been rented out, whatever it was. Because remember, she left because of a famine, which meant that her land, when she had left, was worth, well, nothing. They couldn't plant. Nothing was growing. It was a disaster. So she has this business that her husband owned. And it has passed to her legally under not her name, but her husband's name. And the only people who can then touch it are those who are within that family system. Now, this gets complicated. Not too complicated, but let me explain it to you. In Israel, land is everything. Land is important. And that's why when the 12 tribes entered into the promised land, it was divided among the tribes. And the tribes then in turn were divided among their families. And those lands were to be held in perpetuity, forever, by those families. And so, if you became impoverished, you could actually, quote unquote, sell your land. And I put that in quotes because if you sold your land, and in some cases if you're super impoverished because of the disaster, a famine, so on, poverty that came upon you, you would sell even yourself into a form of indentured slavery. That is how the economics of the ancient times worked. So land was really vital. But get this. In the laws that God gave Israel, there is a Sabbath year, also called the year of Jubilee. And every 7 years or so, there is a fallowness to the land that they're not supposed to work it, in which all people who were indentured would be freed. And all land that was quote unquote sold or bought would be returned to the family from which it came. So that was their whole economic system. Everything gets a reset. Now, that doesn't work for us today. You know our own system. Once you buy it, you bought it. That's the way it kind of worked. Of course, for a long time, the year of Jubilee didn't roll around that often. And to be historically accurate, they never really observed it. If you had a slave, they weren't letting them go. If there was land, they were not giving it back. That, unfortunately, was what happened, and God was not impressed. So land became very important, and it was attached to Elimelech's name. And as I mentioned to you, historically, nobody really gave land back. And this was in a time when everyone did what was right in their own eyes. It was a time of the judges, where it was kind of a free-for-all. And people were pretty conniving. They weren't like Boaz. Most of them were line cutters. I'll put it that way. Most people were not pleasant. They try to get ahead. So it looked like it was a land deal. Pretty straightforward. And he goes, Naomi's got this piece of land that's inherited from Elimelech. So you are the first in line to buy it. You're the one who has the right to redeem that land. Now, that person obviously doesn't think it through a whole lot as you read in the text. Because what's his reaction? Sure, I'll buy it. I got money. I just put some money in the thing. I'm going to get this land. I'll get Elimelech's land. The famine's over. I can farm this thing. Land is money. Land is asset. That's what I'm going to get. But then Boaz says, you need to think about this. Because if you take the land, if you buy this land, there's a marriage that comes with it. So when you buy the land, there's a few things in terms of redeeming the land, being a guardian redeemer. You actually are paying off all the debts of that family. Anything that was owed, anything that was left over, you pay that. You pay kind of the mortgage is what it is. And any liens on that piece of property, right? I don't know if you know banking and stuff like this. There's any claim on that land, you pay for to clear it in order to acquire it. But there are some additional things. He says, Mahlon's widow, he says, you got to marry her now. It's like, what? Now, why did this guy not think about these things? Remember what time this was? I told you. The time of the judges. Nobody cared about the rules. Everyone's cutting in line. Everyone's just doing what they want to do. So for him, it's just a piece of land. But then Boaz says, there are rules. There's laws for taking care of family, because these people are your family too. We're in the same family system. That means you have to marry Elimelech's son's widow. And she goes, you say what? You can see it made me pause. Which means, where's the next one here? The firstborn in this genealogy is not going to be yours. Say what? Because there's rules to this law. Everything that you buy and redeem from that land is not going to pass on to your legacy, your children in your own name. It goes to that firstborn child, that son that is born to you, if it's a son, right? That's another rule. And it will not continue in your line. It will continue on Elimelech's line under his son Mahlon, so that their names can be entered and connected. Remember, to that piece of land that's held in perpetuity by families? It will stay in them. It's not going to go to you, technically. And on top of that, that child that you have, that son, will not be connected to your line. It'll be connected to Elimelech's line. So this guy now, oh dear, Is this the risk I'm going to have to take? Because obviously they didn't care enough. And I mean, see how the elders going, oh, I haven't read that in a while. Or something like this, right? They're going, this guy's done his homework. Like, what did he do between the threshing floor and going to the gate early in the morning to find all these folks and get them together for this conversation, this negotiation? This is a lot of work. Either he studied the scriptures a long time or he dug them up again, whatever he did. There's something about Boaz. And he takes on all that risk we talked about that this other person is not willing to do. He takes that on himself. And of course, there's a really interesting archaeological note about shoes or sandals. That they trade shoes. I hope you didn't wear your Air Jordans, whatever, to the meeting. Because there's this interesting note about the tradition where you take off your sandal and say, here's your sandal, here's my sandal, you give me your sandal, we trade sandals, and it's a good deal. It's just a way of showing, like, I got your sandal, this is for real. And of course, all the elders are already there. But you know what that means? Why did he want all the elders at the gate there? Why did he invite this person to this conversation that was open, even to the public, like a courtroom? Because what Boaz has done here is he's locked himself in. There's witnesses to this. It's very close to like a wedding ceremony. There's a reason why you sign those papers in some cases. Some people do it in front of some official, right? A civic official. But a lot of times there's a lot of people in a church building or in a garden or wherever it is the wedding is held, and they'll sign and they hear the vows, I do, I do. These people are witnesses. So next time you attend a wedding, know that what you're actually doing is not just, getting a buffet dinner or something like this, or wearing a really tight suit that doesn't fit anymore and getting there. You are actually bearing witness, and you are responsible. Like, nobody takes this responsible that seriously these days, but you're responsible for the success of what happens. You're there to support and to say, you made this vow. I saw it. I was there. Or I saw it on Zoom or whatever it was. This is what he's doing. He's locked in. That guy can't get back into this deal. And now he can't get out. Because sandals have been traded. Elders have said, yeah, that makes sense. Pinky promise. And he's fulfilled the promise that he made the night before to Ruth. I've got a really big question. What is up? Why does he take on this? Who would do this? And why would he do this? Now, I told you previously not to use the book of Ruth as a dating example, especially the threshing floor stuff. Don't do that. You can't even find a threshing floor these days. That's not where you do it. But this part, yes, you can take with you, okay? This is the dating part that makes sense. Or, if you're not interested in the dating aspect, remember what we're talking about in terms of the whole book of Ruth. Even simple friendship. What do you look for in a friend? Well, why did Boaz go through all this to make this promise? I mean, it cost him. And it will cost him, even in the future. He's invested. Well, remember our first message. What was it that makes friendship? And he saw this in Ruth. It's loyalty. She was loyal to Naomi, even though she had become such a bitter person and decided to be called bitter. I want to call me Mara. Don't call me no sweet, pleasant Naomi. Call me bitter lady. It's like, okay. And she goes with bitter lady back to her home. And she says, I don't know, God's turned against me. And yet she's loyal. And you know who sees that? Boaz sees that. Now, on her end, she notices, of course, what we talked about in the second message. That Boaz is kind. And his kindness towards her actually even makes hope appear in Naomi, that bitter lady, or Mara, because at that point she's Mara. She says, God might still favor us, the living and the dead. Maybe God does exist. Maybe he does care. Something's changing in someone who had lost their faith. And then last week, we showed how Ruth was willing to offer herself as a sacrifice, to become vulnerable, to be honest, to ask outright for something from Boaz. He sees something in her. This loyalty at the beginning, this vulnerability, the willingness to sacrifice herself. We can tell now that he's likely an older fellow. Right? He says, you could have gone after the young men who've got money and all kinds of, you had options. But you begin to realize this is reciprocal. She saw something in him. He sees something in her. Enough so where he says, okay, this is a person that I will go to bat for. And of course he does. How about your relationships? Now, if you have a partner, you're married or dating, or even if you have a friendship, your friends, do you have these things? The why of promise keeping. Do you respect your friend or friends? Do you respect your spouse? Do you respect your mother and father? Do you respect your children? This is the glue of relationships. This is why he is willing to make this promise and make that investment. This is why he's willing to take the initiative, because he respects Ruth. In fact, I think I would say he admires her. In fact, he says it. Everyone in this town knows who you are, Ruth, because of your loyalty, because of your character. And he goes on to protect her. This is the kind of person I want to spend my money, my time, my life with. Can you say the same? If you've lost that admiration for the person you're with, if you've lost admiration for those who you would consider your friends, those people may not, in fact, be your friends. And if that admiration has been lost in your spousal relationship or in your marriage, there are ways for you to sit and work those things out, because you need to. Because isn't that what it's about? Friendship? If you're not a friend to your spouse, I'm not sure what's going on. If you're not a friend to your friend, I'm not sure what's going on. This respect, this admiration is very key to any relationship, and it determines whether or not you are able to continue to intentionally have a relationship. So I'm going to ask you for one more interactive session part. And that is to sit and share, who is someone you admire? What is it about them that you admire? So, let's go with positive route. Let's not go with like someone you despise. Okay, that's not. Let's go with someone you admire. And why do you admire them? So I'm going to give you, again, about 5 minutes or so. You can get into the same person that you were chatting with before, or you can switch it up if you like, invite someone else in. Discuss this. Who do you admire? And I'm going to try to stick with people who are alive or recently alive, right? Even if somebody passed on recently. Because you can go, I admire Jesus. And it's like, okay, that's not gonna, we all admire Jesus. That's why we're here. But then, well, Jesus is alive. I'm not saying Jesus is not alive. Jesus is alive. But he's obvious because we're all here because of him. Oh, man, that's crazy. But, yeah, we got hecklers in this place. That's okay. It's like in certain churches that happens, right? You go. And also try to pick something like I admire, Michael Jordan because he can slam dunk from, 6 feet away. Let's try to make it a character trait. And not just because someone's tall or someone's skilled at something. Let's try to make it a character issue. Right? Someone that you admire, and what is that about them? And hopefully it's a character issue, character thing that you admire about them. So go to. I'm releasing you to one another. So I'm going to invite you back. I'll share with you someone that I admire. And this was back probably about 20-odd years ago, probably 25 years ago or so, in a time when astronaut families were a very common thing. If you don't know what an astronaut family is, it's people who would have businesses in Asia, and either the husband and the wife or the husband, and they would settle their family here, especially in places like Vancouver. Sometimes Toronto and other places in North America. They send their kids to school or whatever, boarding school, or have a nanny, or they're off on their own in high school. And the father would go, usually it's just the dad who would go and run businesses in Asia. And I'm going to tell you that it had massive, devastating effects to the Asian community. Like massive, destruction of family. So in that time, there was a man who had a factory or had factories in China. And of course, I met him in church, a church I was at. And he shared with me that even though he had this business running very well, he was probably making bank, he decided to close down or to sell off his assets and his business, and to simply not be that astronaut that goes back and forth. Foregoing probably a lot of investment. And the reason he did this was he had 2 young children and a wife here in Canada. And he said, for me, my family, and their well-being is more important than all the money in the world. I respected that. I admired what he was willing to sacrifice to keep a promise he made at the altar to his wife. The promise that is unspoken to his children, that he would be present in their lives. My hope is that as you talked about the person that you admire, there's a saying that goes, birds of a feather flock together. And the Bible has a corollary, an opposite to that. Bad character corrupts good character. Who you hang out with, you become like. Who you choose as friends and how you choose them. This does not mean that you shouldn't have an open heart to meet new people. But are you someone who deals with and spends time with, and are you yourself a person who keeps promises? So is this working? Here we go. Turn this on. As a quick review, loyalty forges friendship. Kindness heals. Vulnerability invites. And promise keeping forges friendship. Before I leave you, there's one little conundrum that this passage pitches to us. It's easy to overlook. But the elders say some funny things. Okay, Rachel and Leah, we kind of know. They're sisters who both married Jacob. Fantastic. And of course, from Jacob comes the 13 tribes. So yeah, okay, we get it. 12 tribes. And then one of the 12 tribes splits into two half tribes. That's Joseph's tribes. That's why 13, I'm not Mormon. 12 tribes, 12 full tribes. And then 11 and then two half tribes. But what does that matter? Because they say one more thing at the very, very, very end of the passage we read. Did you catch it? Because may she, who's coming into your home, they don't even name her Ruth, this foreigner. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the other guy declines. You never know. May she be like Rachel and Leah, who forged the entire, people of Israel. And may your house be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Do you know that story? That's a pretty sketchy story to put in here. Like super sketchy. Okay, here's the quick rundown. This is the mystery. Judah, one of the 12 tribe leaders, marries daughter of Shua, has 3 sons, Onan, Shelah. There's this lady, a Canaanite, who marries dies. And according to kinsman redeemer rules, hey, you hear about that? The other brother becomes the guardian redeemer. So he marries her, and she dies. He dies. Now this guy is only a kid, apparently. He's not of age. I'm wondering if he's still in grade school or something, but 3 kids. And Judah has in his head, technically this is now your guardian redeemer, right? That's his job. So that he can redeem his brothers' names so that they're kept on the roll. So you see where this is all going, right? This is a pretty complicated thing. But Judah says, she's bad news. Did she kill this guy? Whatever it is bad luck. Probably not. She probably didn't have the wherewithal to do that. But he is not going to give his last son to her because this guy is the only chance he has to move forward in his name. And to lose that first grandson to his brothers, 2 of them, crazy, he says, forget about her. He basically kicks her to the curb and says, I don't want to hear from you. Doesn't open the mail. You know how it goes. No emails, whatever. Blocked. And one day, he goes out, and she knows he's going out. They're doing the whole shepherding thing, wandering around. And she presents herself as a prostitute. And he's wasted, or whatever it is he does when he's, running the sheep, like a cowboy thing that they do. They get together. What? Whoops, what? This is a sordid tale. And she has twins. Oh, man. What a messy family. And he turns out to be Perez. What the heck is going on? Why is this brought up in the story? Well, I'm not going to tell you. You got to stay tuned. 2 weeks from now, we're going to finish this whole crazy story, wind up the book of Ruth, after retreat. Remember, we're not getting here, next weekend. But we're going to find out. What up with Perez? What up with those elders? Why are they so down with this? And what happens in the end? The denouement of our story. So enjoy. Read the Bible and see if you can figure it out.